So we'll go ahead and begin Godly Finances Week 4, Retirement Strategies, and Father will please open with prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, we adore you and we praise you. We thank you for the many ways that you have blessed us, especially with the material gifts that you've given us and the talents we have, so that we can actually make those material gifts reality. We ask, Lord, that you guide us so that we might always be prudent in what we do, so that we can provide for our future, but always relying first and foremost on you and what you have given to us. Loving Father, who feeds the birds of the air and arrays the lilies of the field, your care for us knows no bounds. By the power of the Holy Spirit, grant us the grace of an ever deeper trust and dependence on your care and protection. Inspire in us a radical generosity and discipleship that mirrors your own bottomless generosity and will form us into the sons and daughters you created us to be. With you, all things are possible. Please enliven our hearts with a desire to do all that we can to free ourselves from the burdens of debt, pride, and fear, so that reborn into the glorious freedom of the children of God and building on a firm foundation, we can focus on sharing your love with the world around us. We ask all of this in the name of Jesus and through the intercession of our Blessed Mother Mary, Saint Joseph, and Saint James. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So we just want to welcome all of you, and we have some young people, some less young people,
Some ancient ones.
and some ancient ones as well. I think really one of the great blessings of my entire time in the parish is that the entire time I've been here, we have always had very active retired people. Some who really retired as young as 55 because they made decisions when they were very young. And they lived just a very disciplined financial life as a young person, as a middle-aged person, and then really volunteered immensely here, giving back to the faith because of those decisions they made. And so we're just grateful for that. And just for those who are watching from home, just a reminder that next week we will continue to have Godly Finances, but then starting the Tuesday after that, we will be doing God is in the House as Father Grassi and myself come to the neighborhoods. Father will offer Mass. We'll have potluck dinners. So you should be getting postcards at your home. So please respond to those. We're looking forward to those opportunities to both pray together, to bring Christ very physically present into our neighborhoods, but then also to discuss and to just understand each other better and where our struggles are and where our joys are. But this evening we have the joy of having Zach Payne with us. Zach is on our Finance Council and has been helping us really guide our parish financially, and we realized as he was doing so that he has some tremendous gifts to really guide us in our individual lives as well. So we thank Zach for being here, and certainly we'll be able to answer any questions either from our group here this evening, or I would just encourage others to contact him later. He can answer any questions from his presentation. Thanks, Zach. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, Deacon, for having me tonight as we talk about retirement strategies. And a lot of this is going to be about practical tax planning related strategies that a lot of people might not be aware of. And so my name is Zach Payne. I'm a relatively new parishioner here. I've been a parishioner here since 2021. I've been on the Finance Council since 2022. I live in Summit Point, right down the road with my wife, Kirsten. We have a little 13-month-old baby, Claire. She just started walking a couple weeks ago. So, we're really blessed here at St. James to have a Finance Council that is filled with very good people they're doing a very good job for our parish. And so I'm very blessed to be a part of that. And so as for about me, I'm a certified financial planner. I work for a fiduciary fee-based RIA, registered investment advisory group in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I mostly work from home though, that's why I live over here. We have, in addition to our little daughter, we have a dog, Steph, a cat, Felix, and we have some chickens, so we enjoy homesteading. I drive a Volkswagen Golf R. I'm a car guy, so I moved to Summit Point because of the racetrack, so I take my car there sometimes. So a little bit about me.
I got 13 acres. I'll show you the quarters of track.
Oh yeah? Okay, I might have to talk to you. Maybe.
My wife doesn't know it, but we'll
Yeah. You just gotta watch out on the days when they do the drifting over there and the wind's blowing in my direction of my house, because it's like can't go outside. But it's cool. That's the best thing to watch over there. So thanks everybody for your time being here tonight and joining me on this probably somewhat boring presentation, but I'm going to try to make it as entertaining as possible. And I kind of start with kind of the retirement backdrop in our country. It's pretty bad, as everybody probably knows. Our financial position as a nation is atrocious. So we have, it's now actually, I have to update my slide. You know, a month ago it was 32, now it's 33 trillion. And so we're actually in debt, in national debt as a country, and we're actually in historically low top marginal federal tax rates. So what does everybody think is going to happen to taxes over time to help with the debt? Yeah, that's right. That's the consensus in our industry. And actually it's set in the law to increase in 2026 when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, informally known as the Trump tax cuts, expire. So I'll talk about that. So there's going to be a 2 to 4% tax raise across the board if that's not renewed. And there hasn't been any talk that that's going to be renewed at this point in time. And so retirement tax laws have really been in constant flux over the last 6 years. Since the Trump tax cuts of 2017, there's been at least 3 major changes to the tax code, changes to the retirement law that baby boomers a lot of them aren't aware of this. So I'm going to touch on a lot of these important things that are not only going to affect retirees, but also the next generation. And to put it shortly, the government is coming for your retirement accounts. So with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, just some brief highlights. It was the largest tax overhaul in 3 decades. It instituted a single corporate tax rate of 21%. That actually doesn't expire, I believe. So the main thing that's going to expire is the lowered federal income tax rates. They doubled the standard deduction, so 90% of filers now take the standard deduction. So as I talked about in day 1, there's a lot of itemized deductions that people aren't really able to maximize anymore, such as charitable contributions. People don't really get the tax benefits of that anymore because so many people are taking the standard deduction. And then the estate tax exemption was doubled, which is 11 million. So it's very few estates that are subject to federal estate tax. And this all sunsets after 2025. And then in 2019, there was the Secure Act, which is kind of they like these little acronyms that sound really nice, but it's not always the case. So this stands for the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Act. Didn't necessarily set every community up, some better than others, but it changed the required minimum distribution age for your IRAs or 401ks from 70.5 to 72. It has some small business changes for retirement plans, and the big change there is number 4, where there's so 401ks and IRAs and 403bs, traditional accounts, not Roth, they are considered IRD accounts, income in respect of decedents. So the tax liability on those accounts passes to the next generation when you pass away. So your children or whoever you leave it to. And prior to this law, your children would be able to stretch the distributions out over their lifetime, but now that's been done away with, and they have to withdraw those balances fully within 10 years. So I have a lot of clients who they have children in very high tax brackets, so it makes a very challenging situation, because before you know it, 40-50% of your retirement savings can go to the government when you pass away. So that's a huge thing that has to be planned around. And then also there was the Secure Act 2.0, which made a lot of changes to the 1.0, and there's still a lot of clarification that is needed on over 100 changes, nearly 100 changes that affect retirement in the Secure Act of last year, that was in December of last year. Changed the RMD age again and raised it up to from 72 to 73, and if you're born after 1960, it's now 75. So that buys people some time if they're not needing the IRA funds. Maybe they have a pension, they can delay that as long as they want, up to 75. And so there's changes to catch-up contributions. A common theme of this law is the Rothification. So basically the government, the first slide I showed with the tax or the debt issues our country faces, the government is incentivizing people to contribute to Roth accounts because they get the tax dollars up front rather than a traditional account. You pay with pre-tax dollars and you get a tax deduction and you pay taxes when you're subject to distributions at retirement. So the government is really strongly encouraging people, pushing people into the Roth baskets, which are tax-free. So you pay with after-tax dollars and they grow tax-free in retirement. So and they're not subject to require minimum distributions. So they're very nice accounts. They're subject to a limit, but there's ways that retirees can take advantage of those accounts if they haven't already, to maximize their retirement and take and plan for a lot of these changes that the government's rolling out. And so another thing that's huge is, as we know in West Virginia, we just had a 21.25% tax cut, and then next year I think the personal vehicle property tax is going away. You get that back. So West Virginia is moving in the right direction, but it will, where you live in retirement will impact your tax liability. So that's another important thing, and every state is constantly changing their laws. So that's something to make sure you're paying attention to. And you might want to write this down. If anybody is planning to move to a different state, Kiplinger.com is a good website for all those tax-related changes on a yearly basis. And so some additional kind of scary backdrops in our country. So over the last 40, 50 years, there's been a shift from defined benefit pension plans where retirees didn't really have to think about it. Their employer would just give them a pension, and then they'd be able to live on that and Social Security and retirement. And so there wasn't really a huge incentive to save, take on additional risk. But that's been going away. So only about 12% of retirees now, going into retirement now, are covered under defined benefit pension plans. So Social Security, a lot of people, that's a constant thing. Is it on shaky ground? I think that it is, but it's unlikely that that will be subject to significant cuts anytime soon. There's not enough contributors for every person taking Social Security. When it started, there was over 60 people paying into Social Security for every person taking it. Now it's about 3. And in 2050, there'll be 2 people paying into Social Security for every person taking it. So just the math's not really mathing on Social Security, but they'll most likely continue to increase the full retirement age for younger people. There's a number of things that they can do to kind of shore it up, but we're still in the dark on any of those changes. And so people are living way longer. Medical and long-term care costs are rising at 5% per year on average, and the average baby boomer only has $150,000 saved. That's the median amount. I should say median, not average, for 2023. And then the majority of baby boomer net worth is tied up in their home. So if they have an emergency, or if they have to cover their retirement expenses, a lot of people might be forced to sell their houses. So not a good situation for a lot of people. So it's becoming very important that you're not setting it and forgetting it anymore. That's something that you might have been able to do in the past, but now everybody kind of has to take a more active role in their financial plan so they don't run out of money in the future. So especially in their 80s, you don't want to be running out of money. That would be pretty bad. So taxes are one of your biggest threats. In addition to the healthcare costs, taxes are one of your biggest expenses in retirement, and they're only projected to go up from here. And the good news, though, is there are tools in the tax code that can with a little bit of planning, you can mitigate what your future tax bills are going to be in retirement. And it's all really about minimizing the blue slice, which is the taxes. And so I'm going to get into the retirement strategies that you need to know. And these are kind of the three silos that these strategies fall into. And they're critical areas to finding financial peace in retirement. And what that means is, all your base level tasks in retirement, making sure your money is managed properly, your taxes are looked after, your saving for your grandchildren's 529, whatever your goals are, those are taken care of, so you can not worry about those so much, and you can rise up to living your retirement how you want to live and not be stressed out. And so those three pillars are tax and distribution planning. That's the heaviest one that I'll get into first, while everybody's still kind of with me, because it's very boring, but I think it's cool, but most people don't share that. And then investment management best practices, not talking about picking the right funds, just talking about, pick the benchmark index funds, but there's a lot of things that people don't do around the edges of their asset management that can really add up to a lot of additional return. And then the retirement plan, talking about briefly at the end, just what a retirement plan should do for you if you don't have one. There's places online you can maybe work on your own if you're apt to do that, or if you might want to consider talking to somebody to get that. And so this first thing here is about keeping more of your money, tax and distribution planning. This is the meat and potatoes of what I do for clients, and this is where it can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars of value of savings. So just changing the order on which you withdraw from certain accounts at certain times in retirement and pre-retirement. So it's not just retirement, it's making sure that you're doing everything leading up to retirement so you're in position. And so first here, this is a lot of words on this slide. I apologize for that, but just to I felt like this was necessary to kind of clarify for some people that might not be aware of the three different types of tax baskets that most people might have. And not everybody has all of these. Some might only have one or two, but there's tax deferred, which, like I said, are the traditional 401k, 403b, IRA, TSP if you're a federal government employee, employer plans and annuities. So you're contributing using pre-tax dollars. You get a tax deduction the year the contribution is made. That's true for everyone except annuities. So annuities is kind of a different category. I probably shouldn't have put it on there, but investment gains are not taxable until you retire, and then they'll be subject to those RMDs. And that can be, if for people that have significant IRAs, $1 million plus, those RMDs, if that account continues to compound and grow, they can, I've seen RMDs, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year with huge tax bills. And so beneficiaries, will pay income tax on that inheritance. As like I said, they will be required to withdraw that within 10 years. So if you have children that are inheriting these accounts that are making good money, then they could be at risk of, your retirement accounts could be at risk of going to the government. And then the tax-free, those are the Roth accounts, the HSAs for healthcare, 529s for college. These are accounts where you use after-tax dollars, and the investments grow tax-free for, in the Roth case, for retirement, for healthcare, for HSAs, for college, the 529s. And there's no RMDs for the Roth IRA, as I said, and that's a very big benefit. And the beneficiaries of a Roth IRA still must withdraw. If your children inherit your Roth IRA, they still have to withdraw it within 10 years, but they're not going to pay any taxes on it, so it's not a big deal.
No taxes on it at all, or
No.
none on the original purpose?
There's not going to be any taxes at all. And then taxable accounts, those are your brokerage, non-retirement accounts, your bank accounts, your real estate. You're contributing using after-tax dollars. You don't get a tax deduction, and those are subject to a different type of taxation, not ordinary income tax like number one is. They are subject to capital gains tax rates, which are lower than ordinary income rates. So those are very useful to have for certain reasons, which I'll get into. And they're subject to annual capital gains taxation as well. So there's certain investments that you want to try to avoid holding in those types of accounts, so you're not incurring unnecessary capital gains year by year. And generally, your beneficiaries hopefully will have a step up in cost basis, which is the purchase price that you paid for these assets when you pass away. Or if they went down, they'd have a step down in cost basis. So they will not be taxable to your children in that regard.
Question. One of the original theories with 401k was that by putting in pre-tax dollars at the rates now, that when you were older, you would have to pay taxes, but it's likely that you might have a lower income,
Right.
and therefore be in a lower tax bracket.
That's
Is that still kind of true?
That's true for probably the majority of people, but not everybody. Some people are actually in the opposite, where they are in higher tax brackets in retirement, particularly like federal government employees. I see that a lot. I work with a lot of federal government employees, people that have pensions. They and, you know, if they have $2 million, say you have $3 million in an IRA, and you don't need that money, and you get to age 75, and your RMD, which is based on an IRS formula, is $250,000 a year or $200,000 a year. So people can easily, even if they don't have a pension, can be in a higher bracket, and that's assuming that tax rates stay the same as they are now, which we know that they're going to in 2026 go up. So thanks for that question. So one strategy here, like I talked about, is the Roth IRA. You can contribute to it as you go through your life. That's definitely a very recommended thing. And it's if it's subject to a limit of $6,500 a year or $7,500 a year if you're over age 50. Some 401ks now, a lot of them will have a Roth 401k option where you can do much higher than that maximum, so that might make sense for people. They're 100% tax-free after age 59 and a half if you've had the Roth IRA open for at least 5 years. They act as tax insurance, protecting against future tax rate increases. There's no lifetime RMDs. There's tax diversification. So that means that, basically, as an example of what tax diversification means, is if you get in retirement and you have an unforeseen expense, for example, and you really have your IRA that's subject to income taxes, and you have to withdraw a large amount from that IRA to cover this unexpected expense, and that could throw you up into a high tax bracket. Say you're in the 24% tax bracket and your next bracket is 32, so that's an 8% cut because you didn't have that Roth IRA basket. If you took it from the Roth IRA, if you had that available, you wouldn't have any tax issues at all. It wouldn't mess your tax return up. And so it's normally best to pay taxes when your rate is the lowest. And so clients with unusually low income or high deductions in a particular year, they can benefit from Roth accounts. Young clients that started their careers, I always encourage, that's kind of like the first thing for young people to start saving into. And they help those who expect large inheritances that may generate income. And then there's a thing called the Social Security tax torpedo, which this will help, Roth accounts will help take care of. And so another strategy is it's called the Roth IRA conversion, which if you're a retiree that's near retirement or in retirement and you didn't take advantage of the Roth IRA or you didn't know about it, which is the case for a lot of people that I work with, you can still do what's called a Roth IRA conversion. So you take you take a distribution from your IRA and then you pay the taxes on it and you move the full amount into a Roth IRA. And there's no the taxable amount is then added to your income for the year and taxable at federal and state income brackets. So you're paying the taxes now to save taxes in the future. And that can be done incrementally each year, paying attention to your tax brackets, paying attention to your Medicare brackets and your Social Security. It's very complicated, and you want to make sure that you're not triggering certain surcharges on Medicare, things like that. But there's no limit on the size of the conversion. You could do $100,000 in a year if that made sense for somebody. And I've done some that big. There's no age requirement on conversion. You can be 80 years old and do this. Some people because of the Secure Act, they might be in their 80s and they have a large IRA and they don't want their children to pay the tax penalty because they know their children are going to pay a higher tax rate on it, so they just bite the bullet and convert it to Roth as quickly as they can. So I help people do that. There's no income limitations on doing this. And so an example here, so Jill here, she converts $100,000 from her IRA to a Roth IRA. She has to add that $100,000 to her income, and then that will be taxed at her ordinary income tax rate. But doing systematic Roth conversions over time, particularly for people who have large IRAs, it can save a lot of money. And so these conversions may provide a hedge against future tax increases. Like I said, it's called tax insurance. Future rates are unknown. You can pay taxes now at historically low rates and avoid potential headaches of future tax rate increases. Like we said, we know they're going to increase in 2026. So we have a 3-year window where I'm trying to get a lot of clients to do these. And so they also help manage other costs tied to your income, such as your Social Security tax. So Social Security is the cliff tax where it's subject to either 0% income tax, half of it's taxed, or 85% is taxed. And it's a cliff threshold, meaning you get $1 over in that bracket and you're in that rate. Your whole Social Security it can cost you thousands of dollars more just for being in the next threshold. Same thing with Medicare Part B and D premiums. And then these conversions can be offset if somebody has tax diversification. If they have a brokerage account that has investments at a loss, they can harvest those capital losses and offset a lot of these conversions, and then they don't have to pay the taxes. So that's, yeah.
You talk large dollars, not all of us may have large dollars, but if we are in a position of taking an RMD because of our age, we can take the RMD that's left after the taxes, and we can put that into the Roth, correct?
No, you have to have earned income to contribute to a Roth. Yeah.
I heard you say that, so I wanted to be sure.
No, you have to have earned income. So, okay,
so you want to go back to work.
You can convert to a Roth, but you cannot contribute to a Roth. Does that make sense?
Can you convert your RMDs to a Roth before they are required to be distributed?
Yes. Yes.
But some of us who didn't have that advantage now are getting distributions and we would like to put them in a Roth.
Well, you can convert. You have to take your RMD for the year, and then you can convert after that.
Right.
So you just convert the rest of it, but take whatever you're required to for the distribution for this year, which cannot be put into a Roth.
Right.
Converted.
You have to pay the tax on that, and then you can do beyond that. Pay taxes.
Put that in, but after I paid my taxes, I can put that balance in.
Right. So like I said, there's no future RMDs, and the children inherit these accounts tax-free. And there's ways of taking advantage of your assets, like I said, to help reduce the cost of conversion. And so the big benefit is you decrease your pre-tax IRA balance. That's your balance that's subject to taxes. The IRD balance, your beneficiaries will inherit the tax liability on. It decreases your future required minimum distribution bill. It helps keep your taxable income down in retirement, which can help with other AGI-dependent deductions that you might want to qualify for in retirement, and it helps you decrease your Medicare IRMA surcharges, which can be thousands of dollars per year. And so it helps to greatly reduce your overall tax burden throughout your life. Depending on the IRA size, even if it's, a few $100,000 in an IRA doing this, it depends on the person, depends on their circumstance. It definitely helps people that have larger balances more, but I've seen people that have significantly less than that it can still help. And so it can be tens of thousands of lifetime tax savings, it can be hundreds, it can be millions of dollars of lifetime tax savings. It's good to do these in a down market, so your tax bill's lower. It helps to decrease something that's called the widow's penalty, which I'll get into. And then it minimizes your lifetime taxes, maximizes your lifetime wealth, and it positions your assets in a tax efficient way for the next generation. And this is very important with the Secure Act changes, as I said. I already talked about a lot of these. The Medicare IRMA cliff taxes, you make $1 more a year in the next threshold, your premiums can jump by over $1,000 a year, or multiple thousands of dollars a year. Social Security is the same way. So your next dollar in income can be taxed effectively at 40+% on Social Security. So that's called the Social Security tax torpedo. It usually affects people mostly in the $65,000 or lower income range, and that's something to kind of pay attention to. And the widow's penalty, as I mentioned, so our tax code is written to favor married couples filing jointly. So when if one spouse passes away, the other spouse, they get 1 year to the year in which their spouse passed away, they file that year still as married, filing jointly. But after that, they have to file as a single filer. So they're going to get an effective tax rate increase. The dollar amount will be smaller, but the rate that they pay on taxes is going to go up. So doing the Roth conversions, doing a lot of these tax planning items that I'll also get into, they really can help mitigate the effect of a widow's penalty, and that's particularly meaningful if there's a large age gap between spouses as well. And so, usually most 65% of the time it's women that are widows or something like that. And so another strategy is to spend down your traditional taxable retirement balances before you need to. So your RMDs might not start until 73, but you're technically able to withdraw from them starting at 59 and a half. So, and you might not yet be taking Social Security. Maybe you're waiting to your full retirement age is 67 or so. I have a lot of clients they might have some very low income tax years in retirement. It might only be 2-5 years of low income years. And the tendency of people is to say, wow, I'm paying in the 10% tax bracket this year. I love this. I wish this would stay, but it never usually does. And once those RMDs kick in and Social Security comes in, they're going to be back in a pretty high tax bracket. And so one thing to remember is the low income years are an opportunity for tax planning, and try not to sit idly by. So the key to tax planning and distribution planning is to pay the lowest effective tax rate throughout your life. So if you're in that 10% bracket, you might want to consider going up, maxing the 12%, or maybe even into the 22% bracket if you're going to be subject to potentially the 32% bracket in retirement. So I view that as a lost opportunity. And these tax-related items really can cost people. People don't know how much that it adds up to if you're not paying attention to these things. And so I talked about this in the first night. I won't dwell on this slide too long, but a qualified charitable distribution is another great tax planning tool for those who have traditional IRA or 401k balances. So QCD, that's just a distribution from your IRA to a qualified charity. You do that if you're subject to RMDs. You want to do that before you take your RMDs, and then it can count towards satisfying your RMD that year, and you avoid all of the associated income taxes on those. So they can be very useful for people who are doing tithing, people who are just giving normally. it's usually way more advantageous than a normal deductible charitable contribution.
Question,
Yes.
can you have more than one charity that's a beneficiary?
Yes.
Is there a limit on the number of charities?
I'm not aware of a limit, no. It just has to be a qualified charity, which, St. James would definitely.
Clear because of our conversation last night. So someone has a 401k at a company, they retire from that company, that's still a 401k.
Right.
So before they could actually start to do these qualified distributions, they would have to roll
Yes.
that into a traditional IRA.
Into an IRA.
Which could be the same type of investments as their
Right. Yep.
401k, but they have to roll it in order to do that.
Yes.
Take that advantage.
Yes. So
And there's no cost to roll.
there's no cost. It's tax-free. It's I want to say like-to-like transfer. It's technically not the best language to use, but it's the same wrapper. The IRS, those two types of accounts, a traditional 401k and an IRA, they're treated the same by the IRS. So you can transfer from one to the other with no taxes. The only thing is if you take a distribution from the 401k, if they cut you a check, you have 60 days to move it into a IRA, or else they'll tax you on it. So that's something you always want to make sure it's going directly into the IRA, not to you. Right. Yeah. And so, for example, just a benefit, one example of a QCD benefit, as I said, it can also help reduce the Social Security, Medicare, IRMA taxes, keep you from entering a higher bracket. It's very important. There's certain brackets that are very close to being in a much higher bracket, such as the 12 jumps to the 22, so it's a 10% tax increase there, and then the 24 jumps to the 32, and the higher income levels. So if somebody's close to that, if they're just barely into the 32 and they do something like a QCD, it can save them 8% of taxes that they would normally be having to pay.
Question. When you say you must be 70 and a half or older to be eligible to make QCD, is that referring to it affecting the RMD?
No, so that's just QCD is it's not going to count towards your RMDs if you take it at 70 and a half. That used to be the age where people would be required to take RMDs with 70 and a half. They pushed the RMD ages back, but they didn't push the QCD back. So now you can take a QCD 2 or 3 or 4 years before you take RMDs. It used to be at the same year, but it reduces it still saves you taxes, and it reduces the future RMDs by doing that prior to the RMD age.
But you can still do it younger, make a qualified charitable distribution when you're younger. You have to be 70 and a half. Yeah. You can't. Okay, because my mom, I don't know everything she does.
Yeah.
But I know she makes qualified charitable distributions. She's not that old. So I'm not sure if it's she uses that term and is doing something else. It would have to be 70 and a half as far as I know from an IRA.
Or else she's just taking
Right.
the withdrawal indirectly.
She might just be doing a withdrawal, paying the taxes, and it's not actually qualified, but
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
If she needs help, let me know. I can let her know.
Which cell is she in?
Oh, I'm from Wisconsin, so, say that again.
I said, which cell is she in?
Oh.
You were saying,
None
don't
of
help
the
your
above.
mom.
Okay, so another strategy which has
Zach, just on that.
Yes.
So someone may choose to do a qualified charitable distribution even before they start to take money out.
Yes.
Because what that could save them is, say they believe strongly in tithing.
Mm-hmm.
They could give out of that account rather than say they have a more modest income at that point. They can take it out of there.
Right.
There's no tax implication for them.
Right, and they
Doesn't
avoid the
benefit their
taxes.
Charity. They
Yeah.
avoid taxes on it completely.
Yes, you can be 70 as early as 70 and a half, so you can be a few years ahead of those RMDs, and it still will reduce the RMDs that you're subject to in the future by reducing that taxable balance. And so another strategy here is what's called I won't spend too much time on here because it's kind of a niche strategy, but it hasn't been popular really until this year because of interest rates going so high. Now you can get a qualified longevity annuity contract called a QLAC. You can purchase up to $200,000 using your IRA. So that $200,000 is going to be removed from your total traditional retirement account balance and not subject to RMDs until age 85. So it's basically just a tax benefit on a portion of your IRA. You can further save taxes and reduce RMDs up until 85. A lot of people like these. It can be a great way to save taxes, and it kind of can act as a long-term care fund for those people. And there's now what's called a return of premium feature that somebody can purchase. That way, if they die before ever using this income stream, your beneficiaries will receive the full amount, the full $200,000 that you put into this if you did the max. It doesn't make sense for everybody. It's kind of like I said, like a niche strategy, but it can take a significant dent for those people that have larger balances, and they're in need of tax planning. And so I talked about this on day one as well, but I'm going to take a sip of water here real quick. The donor advised fund account is another great type of account that can be used for tax benefits. Like I said on the first night, it's great for being a tithing account. You can set it up as a tithing account, but it also has a huge tax benefit. It can save you a lot of taxes in retirement or even before retirement. Anybody can do a donor advised fund. So it's an account that can be set up with a charitable sponsor, any of the household names, Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab. And so the thing that this helps with is the fact that since the Trump tax cuts of 2017, they doubled the standard deduction. So I said 90% of tax filers don't itemize their deductions anymore. So most people who are tithing or donating to charity, unless they're doing a large amount, they don't get any tax benefit for doing that. So with a donor advised fund, if say, for example, you're tithing and you say, oh, I'm doing, I make $100,000, I'm going to do $10,000 a year to my church, and I have all this money available already, and I wanted to, but I'm taking the standard deduction, so I'm not getting any back tax benefit. I can do 5 years, for an example, $50,000 if you had it into a donor advised fund, and then you get the full tax benefit because you get that full $50,000 deduction in the year in which you contributed to the donor advised fund. And then you can also donate highly appreciated stock positions, securities, ETFs, mutual funds, and avoid the capital gains taxation on that. And then they grow from there on out tax-free for charity. And so there's no limit on the annual amount you can put in there, but there is a limit on the amount of the deduction that you can take in a given year. But if you exceed that limit in the given year, you can carry it forward up to 5 years. So it's a very tax beneficial account.
So Zach, when you make a donation out of that account, how are they controlling to make sure that that's going to? It has to go to a 501c3.
No, it can go to a church. Yeah, like anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody that qualifies. Yeah, they.
You have to report that then that you took out of that account and gave where you gave. Yeah. So you'd want to make sure that you keep it on file. Like you work with the charity that you're donating with to set up. You can set up like an electronic link. You can do a check writing feature where you just give them the check, whoever you're going to donate with. But there's the custodians, Fidelity and Vanguard, they will help people identify charities that are eligible. So, yeah.
Are there ever instances of you wanting to donate to a particular charity and they don't do it?
I haven't seen it, no. So.
Keep all the paperwork. And they should generate all the documentation.
So this next section here is investment management strategies. These are the best practices. This is not talking, like I said, about picking the right funds. This is just time-tested methods that retirees or people approaching retirement want to be aware of in terms of managing their assets that can really add up. So Vanguard, everybody's familiar with them. They're kind of like one of the name brand custodians or investment companies, and they publish this white paper every year, and it kind of summarizes the potential additional excess annual return by following several best practices, which are making sure that you're using cost-effective mutual funds or ETFs, and you're not, sometimes mutual funds can be very expensive. You want to make sure you know the expenses of the funds you're using. And then disciplined rebalancing. So if you have an idea of your asset allocation, of your diversified portfolio, there's always going to be in a given year outperformers and underperformers. So rebalancing would just be selling some of the overperformers to get back to the target allocation and buying some more of the lower performers at a lower price to get up to the target allocation. That adds, and this is the value annually to make up that 3%. And then behavioral coaching, that's really just risk management, making sure you're aware of your risk tolerance. There's things online that you can assess your own risk tolerance, or a financial advisor can help you with that, to make sure that you're not investing over your comfort level, because that's when people get nervous and then they make bad decisions and they sell when they shouldn't be selling. The time proven method is just to kind of set it and forget it in terms of index investing, and that's a big one that can add up to 1.5% per year or 150 basis points. Asset location, making sure you have the right types of investment funds in the right tax baskets. I said there's the taxable, the Roth, and the tax deferred. I'll talk about that. There's certain funds that should be in different accounts, and then the withdrawal strategy, which I've been talking about, making sure you're having your, you're not. I had a client who wanted to. They were going to buy a new house in North Carolina for retirement, and they just wanted to take all the money out of their IRA. They've worked so hard to accumulate it, and they didn't understand. I have this money. When am I ever going to be able to spend it? You always tell me I can't spend it, but by them getting some, changing around the order that they were doing some things and taking from different baskets, was able to save them, a lot of money doing that. So, as I said, mutual funds can be very expensive. They're actively managed, so they have a fund manager managing the basket of stocks. Sometimes I've seen mutual funds well over 1% per year, and the performance really isn't justifying that fee. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to that. They can also, since they're actively traded, they're not very tax efficient. So if they're in a taxable brokerage account, you might be subject to capital gains taxes every year. You might have a capital gains bill. And people don't know why they're getting capital gains bills, but it's from the mutual funds most of the time. And so, like I said, oftentimes the performance doesn't justify the high fees of the actively managed funds. Some of them do, but not all. Most of them don't. Exchange traded funds are usually passively managed. They're called ETFs for those familiar. They're also a basket of stocks, but they're passively managed. They're not actively managed, so the fees are much lower, and they're usually, a lot of them are tracking indexes such as S&P 500 or NASDAQ index, and they're a lot more tax efficient, so they're not going to be having those capital gains distributions year by year. So it's highly important to keep track of that. It's oftentimes on the statements, it's hard to find that information. They don't always publish what your fees that you're paying are, and they don't want to talk about it. So, you always want to make sure that you're aware of that. And so, like I said, regular rebalancing, you're selling some of the overperformers, buying some of the period underperformers to restore the account prior to the allocation balance, the target allocation that you might have, and that can be a significant value add over the long run. Vanguard puts it at about 0.35%. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but compound it over 50 years, it's a lot. And so here's an example. So asset location, inter-near retirement. What types of accounts should hold which types of investments? The Roth accounts are great for growth-oriented stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, and more speculative investments such as tech stocks or cryptocurrencies. Traditional accounts, those taxable accounts, are growth and income-oriented stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, bonds. There's a great place to put bonds and taxable interest dividend generators. Taxable brokerage accounts are great for individual stocks because they're very tax efficient. And if, they're also great for growth stocks if you don't plan to sell them anytime soon and have the capital gains. Maybe you want that as your legacy planning, and your children will, you buy Apple stock and you have $10,000 you put in Apple, now it's $100,000, and your children, you pass away and your children inherit that, and their tax basis is now $100,000 and they don't pay any taxes on it. So, and like I said, not ideal for mutual funds, bonds, and certain taxable interest-bearing investments, because you'll get a tax bill on the interest, and some interest is taxed as ordinary income, and some dividends are taxed as ordinary income. And so this is an example. Oh, that's not, you can't really see that. Just a little quick example of asset location. So $100,000 in an IRA that has stocks paying 4% qualified dividends, $100,000 in a non-retirement brokerage account with bonds paying 4% interest. So the qualified dividends are taxed at ordinary income rates when withdrawn from the IRA. Maybe you're taking your RMDs, and so your tax bill is going to be, it says $960 at a 24% tax rate. It's the same for the non-retirement account. Interest is going to be taxed at ordinary income, and it's a 24% tax rate, so your tax bill is the same at $960. So your total tax bill is $1,920 in this example. And now if you made one change here, and if you put you flipped the location of those assets, you put the bonds in the IRA and you put the stocks paying qualified dividends in the non-retirement account, the qualified dividends are taxed at long-term capital gains rates, which are more favorable than, for most people, usually more favorable than income rates. And so now your tax bill dropped to $600 on that, so you saved $360. That's a small example, but it can really add up for people that have see it all the time. People have things in the wrong baskets. And so another strategy is the tax loss harvesting. So that is offsetting your capital gains from your investments by selling other investments that you own at a loss. So this can be done when you have a property, if you're selling real estate, if you have highly appreciated stock that you want to sell, ETF, mutual fund. 100% of the gains can potentially be offset if you have other investments that are at a loss. And you can select each individual tax lot. So if you had dividend reinvestment on some of these investments and you've got like 50 different cost basis things, tabs, you can pick and choose which one and offset all of those capital gains. And if you have more losses than you have gains in a year, $3,000 of those net losses can be deducted from your ordinary income taxes. So it's actually an even higher tax deduction because, like I said, ordinary income taxes are higher than capital gains. And then any that's left over from that $3,000, you can carry it forward to the following years. So you could keep doing $3,000, $3,000, $3,000 every year. So there's one rule. It's called the wash sale rule, though. If you say you sell a stock that's at a loss, but you believe in the stock and you wanted to buy it back, you have to wait at least 31 days. You can't just sell it, take the loss and harvest the loss and then buy it back. The IRS wants you to have some risk in doing that. If the stock goes up, you have to buy it back at a higher price. So there is some risk in doing that, but you can. There are rules. You can buy kind of equivalent. They have to be certainly like not substantially equivalent, but you can kind of buy like other stocks or funds that are in the kind of similar. There's ways to do that. And so it's most advantage for people in higher capital gains brackets, 15 or 20%. Can be used strategically in certain years. You can take advantage of tax arbitrage, realizing up to $3,000 of capital loss at ordinary income rates, higher rates than capital gains. So that's a tax arbitrage there, when you're able to take an asset that is normally subject to a lower capital gains rate and offset higher income tax rates. And so don't waste opportunities to sell investments at a loss to save taxes. If you're selling a home, if you're selling whatever you want to sell, and you always want to make sure you look at your assets, and if you have things that are at a loss, you might want to make some changes, make some sells to take advantage of that. Speak to your CPA or your financial advisor about that. And so this is getting back to that best practice about making emotional decisions, which is something that an advisor can help you not do. A lot of people I see are people that just kind of set it and forget it, and they don't really make a lot of these decisions, and so they don't necessarily need somebody to talk them off the ledge. But it can be one of the biggest impediments to retirement success is selling in a down market. So you want to take the time to think about and evaluate your investment risk tolerance. Make sure you're appropriately invested, not higher than your comfort level, because that's when people get really nervous, and then they make bad decisions if they're in riskier investments when they should be in less risky investments. And so a good way to do this is to have your goals mapped out with funding strategies well in advance as well. So another thing is when people they're in retirement and they have expenses, or they have things that come up that they want to do, or they have bills that they need to pay, and the market's not complying with what they want to do. The market's down 20%, and then they have to take the money out, and they didn't tell me a few months ago. They knew this was coming and they didn't let me know, and now they have to live with that decision, and it's going to hurt them in their long term. So you want to make sure you have your goals mapped out with a funding strategy well in advance, so you avoid things like this, and always maintain that emergency fund 3 to 6 months. And so here's a little picture of that, taking time to understand your time horizon. Retirement is just an event. So some people might live 30 years after that event. So your time horizon still could be 20 plus years at retirement, So that's something people say, oh, I'm going to retire. I have to put the brakes on. I want to go 100%, bonds or cash. And then I show them a plan, and then it's saying, well, you can't really do that because you're going to run out of money when you're 83 years old. So that's something to be aware of, and just knowing your goals. And so Vanguard, they put that 3% number up to 3%, and this is the power of compounding on that, taking advantage of the best practices, making sure you're not having those high fund fees, you're making sure your asset location, you're not selling in a down market. 5%, say somebody was very average, they make some bad decisions, they get emotional, and maybe their average return is only 5% per year. And on a $500,000 initial investment, over 20 years, they have $1.3 million. That's still pretty good. But 8%, if they're doing all those rebalancing, all those best practices, it could be 8%. Just same investments, same index investments. So we talked about this, the term of rollover. Why would somebody roll over their 401k, 403b, or TSP in a tax-free rollover to an IRA? So you maintain full control and ownership when doing that. You pick the custodian. Maybe you want to go to Vanguard, you want to go to Schwab, you want to go to whoever you want to go to. There are usually limited investment choices inside a employer retirement account, like a 401k or 403b. It limits diversification and potentially increasing your investment risk. Sometimes there's ways to get, it's called return efficiency. So you can have actually less risk in your portfolio, but actually potentially better return, or the same amount of return for less risk. So an IRA you have the full investment spectrum available to you. So you can get any stock, any mutual fund, ETF, treasury bonds, CDs from banks all around the country, cryptocurrencies, things like that, futures, commodities. So some employer accounts require that withdrawal. This is mainly regarding the federal TSP, but I've seen it for certain 401ks. You can't withdraw from the funds that you want to withdraw from. They make you take from all your funds proportionally. So, for example, in the TSP, you have the S&P 500 index fund, which is called the C fund, and then you have the, kind of like cash account, variable CD, which is called the G fund. You want to take from the G fund without selling the C fund. You can't do that. So that's why a lot of people choose to roll to an IRA from the TSP. And it can just be easier to deal with than dealing with your employer or TSP for distributions. You can link it right up to your checking account, and it's just seamless. And so another big reason is most retirement plans do not allow Roth conversions within the program. So all those lifetime tax planning tools, the big one is the Roth conversions. Those you usually have to roll to an IRA to do those. For the QCDs as well, usually have to roll to an IRA. And then some people, if they would like enhanced asset management, employing the best practices. If they don't know about those, what I was just talking about earlier, they don't want to deal with that themselves. They want to hire somebody like a financial planning person or a financial advisor or for distribution planning services and asset management. They would then roll it to an IRA. And so we're going to talk about here, these slides I'll kind of breeze through, getting towards the end here. I know everybody's probably like bored out of their mind, but so this is kind of wrapping it up, putting a bow on it. With the retirement plan. So this is a good thing to have. It'll tell you where you sit in retirement and are you going to make it in retirement. It'll take into account your budget, your spending, your income, all your debt, and put it into one big nice package for you to look at. And it'll run simulations, with market timing, what is the average return, what is the inflation rate. Very powerful software packages out on the market these days that are very nice. So it'll look at financial planning. Financial plan should look at all the goals for you and your family in retirement, or maybe even your before retirement, and what help you kind of visualize or imagine what it'll feel like to achieve those goals and come into actualization. And so it'll look at what keeps you up at night. It'll talk about market volatility. How do you go about creating a retirement plan? How does everything come together? A lot of people have all these different pieces of the puzzle and they don't know how everything fits together to meet their goals. It'll address a lot of questions such as, am I going to have enough money to retire? Am I going to outlive my money? What about, I've talked a lot about taxes and health and medical expenses. What if I die early and have that widow's penalty issue? And then what about legacy for my family, for charity, or anything else you want to address? So that financial plan, these are all the items that you're not going to be able to read this, but financial plan I'll read them off to you, should address all these things. And so that's investment management, retirement planning, tax planning, minimization. I have a chartered federal employee benefit consultant. I work with a lot of federal government employees, so that's kind of like my niche. It doesn't apply to everybody. And then insurance planning, it'll go over your cash flow and budget. It'll go over your financial estate planning, review all your beneficiaries, and then help with family assistance. So if you want to save for children, help your children save, elderly care planning, all those things. It should be plan should be a holistic plan. And so This is just a screenshot of the software that I use. It's called Money Guide. It's the most popular in the financial planning industry. It's been around since the 90s. It's great. It generates like a success meter, and you can do different Monte Carlo simulations, which basically means it runs 1,000 different market timing scenarios, and it gives you that success meter. Are you going to make it in retirement? It has all the cash flow and spending details as well. It's very visual and easy to follow. And so this is a little visualization here of the 4 stages of life and how they constantly change. There's people in the early accumulation phase, they have different concerns. Maybe they're just worried about budgeting, paying off debt, their children, planning for their children's college savings or whatever, home ownership, life insurance, and then as they get on in age, the needs change. So you might have career changes, you might be really getting into some meaningful savings in your mid-accumulation phase, and how do you maximize that using those best practices, and how do you maintain proper diversification. And then in retirement, in phases 3 and 4, it gets very complicated with the retirement plan, formulating that retirement plan, projecting your health care costs, long-term care costs, and potential needs. If somebody's a business owner, that's, how does that play into the plan? And then all that tax planning that I talked about. And then, so tax minimization is vital at every stage of the game. And then also in stage 4, you get the estate planning, legacy planning, and the distribution planning. And so a plan will kind of optimize multiple things. So you'll have the typical software strategy, the base case in a plan, and then you can optimize your Social Security withdrawal strategy, optimize your investment management using those best practices, and then get into the tax planning, optimize your withdrawal sequence, and it really is quite amazing how much money doing some of these changes can add up. And so I already talked kind of about this, the financial peace ladder, and taking away a lot of the managing the money. Some people might not be into that, and some people outsource the bottom tasks on their asset allocation and insurance planning, tax planning, healthcare planning, retirement planning, and then that enables them to maintain, be at the top of the ladder. This is kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but for finances. And so this is just one of the last slides here, potential cost of inaction. I just put this on the screen here again with the tax rate situation in the U.S., the debt situation. Most likely tax rates are going to have to come up in the near future. So a lot of people's nest eggs are at threat, and a lot of those strategies that I talked about can really be meaningful now. So everybody kind of has to take a more active role in thinking about these things. And if you know anybody that's not here tonight and they might have a similar situation, they have those taxable accounts, those tax deferred accounts, they might want to think about doing some tax planning over time. So it can really add up to a lot of income tax savings, and then more to your children, more to your charitable causes, your church, and less going to the government, because they just want to eat it all. So, and then if you are somebody who is financially astute and you enjoy this stuff, or you already work with somebody, that's great. You just want to make sure that you're working with somebody who adheres to the fiduciary standard. That means if you do work with a financial advisor for any help, that they always put their client's interest above their own at all times. This is a requirement of the CFP designation. Certified financial planners have to operate as fiduciaries. And just beware sales of investment and insurance annuity products for commission. So you want somebody, if you do work with somebody on a financial plan or anything, you want to make sure it's a fee-based arrangement and not a commission-based, because that's where a lot of the conflicts of interest come into play. You want somebody impartial, unbiased in investment planning recommendations that can get any investment across the whole spectrum, any fund. There's no, not tied to any specific fund company or anything like that. Somebody who's transparent with you. So just wanted to put that out there as the last slide, but that's really it. So hopefully that was informative, but thanks everybody for coming. So
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
I'm thinking an IRA. Now I did 401ks with an IRA. Now the IRA, you were able to write off of that off of your income over the years, putting it forward. Now we're saying that later on in years that tax rate's going to go up, so you're going to pay more. But if I say, well, I got the benefit of it slowly over those years off of my income tax as I needed it. Now, if I went to a Roth, then that Roth, I have to be careful because all of a sudden I might need some money and it's easy to take that money without any tax penalty. Now I've got to put that money back. That might be harder after 10 years if you take $50,000 for some reason. Now you got to put that back. Where the IRA is forcing you to say, I can't take that
That's
now
true.
until 70 and a half or 73.
That's true for people who are, the psychological effect of paying taxes on the money that you withdraw can keep you from wanting to withdraw the money, and then that can have an effect where you're able to not spend down the money faster than you should be. So for
It's a form of a break.
right.
Right. You're getting the break, but you could pay for it more when you're taking it. But you're only going to take a portion. You're not going to take it all.
Right. It depends. I mean, the question of Roth conversions, doesn't make sense for everybody, but usually I'd say majority of people, some level of Roth conversions as you get in close to retirement makes sense, because especially with the people that have the larger balances. But it's a case-by-case basis, and you just have to run the numbers. And I've got software, it's called Holistiplan. It's great. You can upload a tax return and project tax scenarios year by year, and it'll take the guesswork out of it. Should I do Roth conversion? Should I not? Should I contribute? If somebody's still working, should I contribute to the tax deferred and take that tax deduction, the normal traditional 401k, or should I contribute to the Roth IRA or the Roth 401k? What is the effect on my deductions and credits and all those things? So it's
That's where your management has to come in.
right.
Play. You've
Yeah.
got to manage yourself. You got to manage
Right.
your money,
Yep.
because you could get into trouble too. And
Right.
find out at age 65, this is not really what I expected
Right.
to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing you mentioned up there, long-term care. At age 65, you got to think about that, but you should have been thinking about that when you were in your 40s. You're not going to take
Yeah.
out long-term
Usually-
care at 65 when it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, when it
Right.
wouldn't have cost you that much at age 40.
Well, it wouldn't have cost you at age 40, but the rates increase over time.
Right.
But the escalation of those
Right.
rates is more gradual because you have an earlier investment than if you do
Right.
it at 65 where you have to make a
Right.
major jump.
Yeah, usually the sweet spot for getting a long-term care policy is, mid-50s. So it can, some people get it earlier, and that's fine, and they might get a lower rate when it comes time. Throughout the years, they're at a lower rate, but it's a lot of years to be paying a premium when you're unlikely to use the coverage anytime soon. So
Yeah, it's an insurance that says, okay, I'm going to need it sometime up here.
But by the same token,
And if you don't, you lose it.
and if you don't make the investment, the catch-22 is
Yeah.
at the cost of that long-term health care, you pay for it on your own, having not invested in it. could be very expensive. There's a person that we're aware of who chose not to take long-term health care. Their spouse had to go into care, and the cost of that in a matter of 2 years was more than they'd invested their time because of the health condition. So it's a roll of the dice.
Yeah, that's something that like a financial plan, a comprehensive financial plan would look at is projecting the long-term care costs with the higher inflation. I typically use 5% on that. And if we have people that are in their 40s or 50s and we project them to live another 50 years or 40 years, and at the end of the plan, in the cash flow, those long-term care costs can be like $300,000 a year, and that's what we've used in the numbers. And depending on what their assets are, it'll tell us, can they self-fund with their investment accounts or their assets, or do they need a long-term care policy? So it depends on the person. Typically, if somebody is pretty well off, then they might not need one. So it depends. And it also depends on what their legacy planning goals are. If they are well off, but they have very specific legacy planning goals for their children, they want to make sure that a long-term care need is not going to be hitting their assets at the end of the plan and reducing what they can give to their children, then they should get a plan. So, and there's less and less insurance companies that are underwriting long-term care insurance anymore. It's mainly just a Mutual of Omaha, and then the federal government actually is another big. They offer pretty good, probably the best long-term care available, but they just paused their program for 2 years. So now people that are trying to get into it, they are not able to right now. So, and that's something that's cheaper for men than it is for women. Life insurance is more expensive for men than it is for women, because men typically die sooner, and women typically live longer, and they more likely to use long-term care. So it's opposite there. Any other questions? Yeah.
So on the mutual funds versus the ETFs, like the benefit of getting a mutual fund because it's actively managed is it's going to perform better over time because you're paying a higher percentage on that.
Right. So, I mean, some of them do, but vast majority do not.
So you would just be better
I would
with an ETF.
I
every
would
time?
stick with the indexed ETFs.
Really?
If you were somebody who was really not super into it, if you're not like an investment nerd, maybe you just stick with the S&P 500 index ETF. Ticker SPY is one that we use, and it's going to be a lot more tax efficient if you have it in a brokerage account. If you have it in a retirement account, you can use mutual funds in an IRA or 401k. I'm not against mutual funds. We use mutual funds for our clients, but we really do a lot of due diligence on the mutual funds to make sure that they have a good track record. What is the methodology of the fund manager? And still, we try to look for the fees to be reasonable, because I've seen people that have mutual funds that are like 1.5%, and they don't even know it. And the performance has been very average. They would have been better off in a ETF. So, yeah.
I think they're forcing the companies now to divulge how much they're writing off for
I hope so.
Services.
Yeah. I know for me, I have to be upfront and clear about every fee that we charge, and that's great. That's how it should be. But it seems like there's different rules for different, the larger firms get a little bit of benefits, and sometimes it's hard to find. They're not on the statements. They're just not there. And so I have to, I look at people's statements, and I have to go online, and I have to go to use I have a software called Morningstar, and I have to look this ticker up to find what the expense ratios are. So you got to be careful, and you can find them online through some digging, but it takes some work. So
There's also a greed factor.
yeah.
I mean, you can be like the turtle and you'll get there, or you can try and be a rabbit and fall short.
Yep.
That's the whole thing you talked about earlier about people who are looking to make great big gains. And you're talking about the rest of your life. You don't have to rush it.
Right. Yeah, Dave Ramsey talks about that. the tortoise, the investing in the ETFs or whatever is the tortoise approach. You'll get there, but a little, smooth and steady, and then the speculation.
I mean, you don't panic every time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
anybody who watches the markets on a daily basis is going to have a heart attack at least once a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm making money now, I'm losing money.
That's right.
now, I'm making money.
Yeah. And the hare is the speculator, and then the what is it? The possum in the middle of the road is the gambler that's waiting to get hit by a car. I think that's what Dave Ramsey said. So, but yeah, that's all I had. Any other questions for anybody? I have my cards. If anybody wants to take a card and talk to me privately, I can do that. Okay.
So next week is our last one. It's going to be a really great class. It's taught really focusing on end-of-life issues. Some of the things that Zach talked about this evening, so he'll have be here to help address some of those. Father will be here. Really the most important part of all of this is to make sure that our soul is pure, that we are really ready for eternal life. And so he'll address that area first. And then we're also blessed, Mike Docali and Kate Berry will be presenting next week. Mike has really just a profound understanding of really the idea of providing for one's family and making sure for those of us who are married that your spouse knows what you're doing so that they aren't left in alerts. Oftentimes, when Zach was talking about, well, if you have an interest in this, in many of our couples, one of them has a great interest in this and does a lot of things, and the other one has no interest at all. It's just, is there money in the checking account? And so if the person who has done all the investing dies and has never shared that, it can be really difficult. So Mike just has some great strategies on that. So it'll be 4 great presenters next week, and I think hopefully helpful wherever you happen to be in that walk. So Father, can you lead us in a closing prayer?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, we ask your grace upon us that we might truly take all of this information home with us and be able to follow your plan for all of our material needs. We thank you for Zach and all of his wisdom and knowledge and his willingness to share it with us. We ask your blessing upon him and his family and upon all of us and all of these families, that they might truly be prepared for all the ways that they can serve you more fully. And through the intercession of Mary, the Immaculate Conception, may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.